It's good to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back from Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I take my first pass at the commander in front of us on my quest to brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby. It's ABB, always be brewing it, and that's what we're back to do today. That deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. So I'd really appreciate it if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, consider checking out those links in the description below. I'd appreciate it. But today, we're doing something a little bit different. Bumbleflower is a commander we've looked at in the channel before. We've covered her back when the Blumenbro commander decks came out. But I wanted to do a counters commander because there's been so much great counter support over Tarkir Fantasy, Final Fantasy, and even in Edge of Eternities. And I had a counters deck in the past. I was playing Hackball in the past, and it was a fun deck, but I kind of always wanted to add white to it, get some like Bant counter stuff. I took a big look at Yuna from Final Fantasy, but I kind of wanted something different. And as I was kind of thinking things through, kind of musing in my head, Bumbleflower was a commander I came to. So Bumbleflower is a 4-mana 1/5 rabbit citizen with vigilance. She says whenever you cast a spell, target opponent draws a card, you put a counter on a creature and it gets flying until end of turn. And then if it's the second time this ability is resolved, we get to draw 2 cards. So basically every time we cast a spell, counter goes on a creature, it gets flying and opponent draws a card. And in my head, I'm like, flying fixes a lot of problems that counter decks have. Mainly that they need evasion to punch, big creatures in. But I was like, the card draw is not bad, and we have ways that we could pay off either our opponents drawing cards or us drawing cards, which the deck's going to try to do, but it's not the main gameplay. The main gameplay is counters. Bumbleflower is going to add counters. We're going to purposefully pick creatures that either immediately profit from counters or make counters on them even better and try to make this crescendo of counter stuff that can take over a game. My real target cards here were cards like Ouroboros and Warden of the Grove, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But basically, this episode today is the first shot I'm taking at Bumbleflower for myself. I'm going to take this deck, play it on my own, try to make it my own, and have some fun with it. But I wanted to kind of take my first shot of it, throw it up on here, and get your guys' opinion of it. But I want to say thank you so much to the channel members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in seeing all of our videos just a little bit earlier for just $1 a month, consider checking it out down below. Well, all right. There's a lot of ways to take advantage of counters, but specifically this one, we're going to talk about putting counters on other things. So we want things to not only have counters on them, but put counters on everything. One of the other commanders I really heavily considered was the Bant Galadriel from Lord of the Rings, the commander said. Whenever another creature comes in, you choose one that hasn't been chosen. Net mana, put a counter each creature ascribed to. This was the very close number 2 I honestly thought about to head this deck up, because you can guarantee the counter on all your creatures at least once a turn. The mana's not bad, and the draw is not bad either. It just came down to do I like the flying from Bumbleflower better, or do I like the guaranteed other stuff? And the truth is, I just like the flying further better, because we can use cards like Ouroboros, the new card from Edge of the Eternities. Beginning combat on your turn, you put counters on each creature control equal to Ouroboros' power, meaning the bigger Ouroboros gets, the worse your board gets for your opponents. Warden of the Grove, at your end step, you put a counter on it, but whenever another non-token creature comes in, you get the choice. You can either put X counters on it, where X is the number of counters on Warden of the Grove, or you can make an XX spirit token. Now, the more counters on Warden of the Grove, the better that choice becomes. Do you want the giant spirit token, or do you want to put the counters on the thing that came in? You can start to see where you can make these relevant choices. I think we still play Yuna. Yuna's a great mana dork, allowing you to put 2 counters on the thing that comes in, and whenever another permanent we control is put in the graveyard from the battlefield, had counters on it, you put that many counters on another creature. It's nice that you get to move the counters for it. She's a great dork though in adding 2 mana or two counters right to the thing that you cast. Zamone, the starter combat on your turn, adds 2 counters, adds 1 counter each up to different creatures. You could double counters on creatures. Very interesting. Thunderous Velocipede says each other vehicle and creature you control comes in with an additional counter on it if it's mana value 4 or less. Otherwise, it gets 3 additional counters. So if it's higher than that, it gets more counters, which is great, right? Those big creatures can come in with more. Otherwise, you're kind of starting the ball rolling on just a single counter. Feldar Retreat. Whenever a land comes in, you could put a counter on all your creatures to give them vigilance. Huge. Vigilance is a massive deal, especially when you're going to be attacking, hopefully as aggressively as we can. Vigilance means that we can attack freely and then block, or you can get that 2/2 white cat beast if you want to kind of go wide. And then Virtual Loyalty kind of does the vigilance that Feldar Retreat does. The difference, though, is that we just untap all of our creatures beginning and end step and put a counter on them. So even the mana dorks that didn't attack, right, get to untap and get another counter on them, which is pretty nice. And there's more ways to do that in the deck. So okay, we're going to try to spread counters. Remember, Bumbleflower does it too when we cast spells. So how do we take advantage of the counters? Well, you have creatures like Battle Priest and Falconer that say each creature you control with a counter on it has blank. Battle Priest gives them lifelink. Falconer gives them flying. So you might feel that the flying is redundant with Bumbleflower, but again, a whole board of flying versus giving one creature flying is a huge deal. We'll happily take it. Also note that these abilities don't say during our turn, meaning with a Falconer out in a board full of creatures with counters on them, we can block flying creatures. With Battle Priest on a board of creatures, we're gaining a ton of life, gaining life, right, as we attack or block. Champion Lambhole, I think, is one of those cards that can pretty easily help us. Creatures with power less than her can't block our creatures, and every time another creature comes in, you put a counter on Lambhole. Again, not a bad target for Bumbleflower as well, as once you get champion up to 6 or 7 power, I mean, there could be opponents that just may not be able to block you at all. Now you're getting massive damage in and guaranteeing it in. Chocobo, Knights, kind of adds that, Battle Priest Falconer style ability, but it's only on attack, but it gives your creature with counters on them double strike, a huge ability, especially when you pair with that flying that Bumbleflower may be able to give out. I mean, you're talking about potentially massive swings. Danny Pink's going to draw you cards the first time a counter's put on each of your creatures a turn, meaning you can draw potentially a large amount of cards. This really pays off with your draw outlets, the things we're going to talk about that care about when we draw. This is huge. Sovereign Akaneka How, whenever it attacks, for each creature you control that has a power greater than its base power, you put counters on it equal to the difference. Basically, just zooming up your amount of counters you're putting on your things. Hopefully, just absolutely exponentially making our creatures harder to deal with. Of course, we're going to play Tidus. At the start of your turn, you can move a counter from a creature onto another creature. Whenever one more creatures hit, you draw a card and proliferate. Again, there's no reason not to play it. Tidus is a great body on its own. It has a great ability, and you don't mind putting a couple counters on it. Tuskguard Captain, very similar ability to Battle Priest and Falconer, just giving trample instead. You can also play the Dust Shell Crawler or things like that. I mean, there's more of these abilities. This is just the couple that I'm talking about. And then 20-Toed Toad, I think, is a little bit more easier to think about now that we have all these things that are trying to care about counters going on to things. Whenever you attack with 2 or more creatures, you put a counter on the Toad and draw a card. And whenever 20-Toed Toad attacks, you win the game if there's 20 more counters on it or 20 more cards in your hand. I think getting 20 more counters on it is more likely to be done than 20 more cards in our hand, but it increases our maximum hand size, and we have a lot of ways to just dump counters on a creature. So 20-Toed Toad adds a nice alternate win con for us. Synchronized Charge is a nice alpha strike card for us. Lets us put 2 counters among 1 or 2 target creatures we control, so 1 each basically. And then or we can put 2 on 1. And then all of our creatures with counters on them, Vigilance and Trample, and just go in. The best thing about this card, in my opinion, is that it has Harmonized for 4 and a green, meaning we can cast it from our graveyard and tap a creature to reduce its cost by X, where X is that creature's power, and then use this and do it again. So basically, we have an Alpha Strike card we can use twice. Wave Goodbye, bounce each creature that doesn't have a counter on it back to their opponent's hands. Mutational Advantage gives all of our permanents we control with counters on them hexproof and indestructible. Prevent all damage will be dealt to them this turn. Proliferate, so this could be used either offensively or defensively, depending on what you need to protect from a board wipe. Take a big block, right? Block a bunch of your opponent's things, and then use Mutational to keep your creatures alive. I think there's so many opportunities there. Ripples, same thing. Proliferate, but then choose any number of permanents we just proliferated onto and just phase them out. This is going to protect us from, Farewell, Exile board wipes, things that could be a real problem. Even bounce spells, bounce, Cyclonic Rift, things like that. Also know that Ripples can help you save things like Planeswalkers if you had counters on them as well. So there's interesting things there, but Ripples here is mainly to protect our board of creatures. Of course, we're playing the Hardened Scales Branching Evolution style of enchantments to modify the number of permanents, counters that we put on a permanent we control at a time. And then Innkeeper's Talent just feels great in a deck like this. Every combat you get to hang out a counter. On level 2, we give all of our permanents with counters on them ward 1. And then at level 3, you basically get the Branching Evolution, Doubling Season style ability. Just double the amount of counters that we put on something whenever you put a counter on something. I think level 2 is the most useful part of this card. Ward 1 is a huge deal. We don't think about it a lot because most of the time we're swordsing something into, we have plenty of mana left over. But you would be very surprised how often that 1 mana can make a difference to your opponents. They may only leave up 1 mana for a swords. They may only leave up 1 mana for a path. And they don't, and that ward 1 could be the difference between your things staying around and your dying. Simic Ascendancy, a classic, counters win con. Every time a counter gets put on a creature you control, you put a growth counter on the Ascendancy, and at the start of your turn, if there's 20 more on it, you win the game. Sphere Grid from Final Fantasy Commander fits so great into this style of deck, giving all of our creatures with counters on them reach and trample, and then they get an extra counter whenever they hit a player, but I think reach and trample's huge. This plus something like Garruk's Uprising was a reason that I kind of took out Dust Shell Crawler, because I was like, we have enough of these abilities and we can value that. Now, Dust Shell versus Tuskguard is your choice. I mean, I kind of like Tuskguard because I like Tarkir, but I mean, you can make your decision there. And then Terra Symbiosis, that new card, whenever one more counters are put on a creature we control, we can draw that many cards if we want to, only once per turn. This just feels like a net positive. It's such an interesting ability, and I think it's going to lead to some great cards at the moment. Now, coming back to this Hardened Scale style ability, I looked at Loading Zone, the new Edge of Eternities card. Whenever a counter be put on a creature, spacecraft, or whatever, for double it, and you can warp it in for 1 mana. I really went back and forth on Loading Zone. I really wanted to put it in, but I chose not to. But I think it's one of those cards I'm going to be thinking about a lot. Well, okay. We don't just want to discount drawing cards, because Bumbleflower does give us the option to draw 2 extra cards each turn if we cast 2 spells. And there's a lot of really interesting cards that care about that. You have a set of creatures that say whenever you draw your second card each turn, do something. Alondra makes drakes. Jor-El makes cats. Alondra gives all your drakes a buff if you draw 5, or when you draw 5 and then more cards. Jor-El for 6 mana can just make all your creatures a base XX, where X is the number of cards in your hand, making your counters even better on top of that. But I think one of my favorite draw outlets in this deck is Teferi. So Teferi gets a loyalty counter on it whenever you draw a card. The 0 can also just draw a card, so it's effectively a +1. The -2 makes these spirits that grow whenever you draw cards, getting counters on them. That's great, because we're going to want to draw cards. And when you're starting to draw multiple cards per turn, right now they get bigger and better. And then the -12 is just particularly brutal. So you pick an opponent, they pick a permanent they control and return it to their hand, and then shuffle every other non-land permanent they control into their library. This is a brutal ability. It's kind of a one-person. It's almost worse than Cyclonic if you think about it, because back to your hand is a whole lot better than into your library. And we're not playing a ton of Proliferate. Like, Proliferate isn't the goal of this deck. It could easily do that. It's just not the intention. But again, with the amount of card draw we're doing, we might be able to... I mean, the goal is to Teferi once. If I can Teferi twice, that's great. But I think I really want to make these 2/2s. I really want this board of creatures that's growing, each turn and becoming more of a threat. Min is our third main draw your second card. She makes an illusion. And those illusions grow for each other illusions you control. And then when they die, you have a chance to put a permanent with mana value less than equal to its power from our hand on the battlefield, which is an interesting ability. Maybe you block with the illusion or do something with it. Psychrosis Caller is another, draw outlet. Whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses a life. So this really makes us want to draw those cards, right? And then it grows for each card in our hand. And then Alma's Seas, whenever you draw a card, you put a counter on it, move 8 counters on it to get a big 8/8 Kraken token. So again, we care about the card draw. It's not like we're just going to leave it on the battlefield. Profs, or leave it off, even though we care about the counters. Profs lets us draw a card when it comes in, no maximum hand size. And at the start of our combat, if we've drawn more than 1 card each turn, we get to hand out counters equal to the number of cards we've drawn over that 1. Again, nice if we can trigger Bumbleflower to draw the extra 2. Solitary Confinement is where I tried to bring my prowess in, these other enchantment spells coming in. So you get Shroud, you skip your draw steps, and you prevent all damage to be dealt to you, but you have to pitch a card at the start of your turn. So my thought here is, if I can draw enough from Bumbleflower and other abilities, I can keep Solitary Confinement, probably pretty much prevent me from dying in combat, and then allow me to be aggressive. I don't expect to see Confinement every game. We're not trying to find it, but it's one of those pieces, like Smothering Tide, for example, where you're going to try to hurt your opponents for drawing cards off of Bumbleflower's ability to make us treasures, right? These are cards we don't expect to see every game, but when we see them, they're going to be really useful. And then Wizard's Class, no maximum hand size for just 1 blue mana is great. Once you get it up to level 2, you draw a couple cards, and then when you get to level 3, whenever you draw a card, put a counter. Creature you control is huge, especially when we're drawing multiple cards per turn. But I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. This is my first pass of this, and I think even by the time I record this video, I will tell you the deck's changed slightly. I'm going to put a link down to my personal deck list for this, because I want to show you that this was the start and that I did change. So I'm going to do that down below. But going into testing, my immediate thought was, are there any Hydras out there that make a big deal? Hydras are a really fun creature type. They come in bigger for the amount of mana you spent to cast them. The first one that came to mind was Goldbane Hydra. It comes in with haste. Whenever it dies, you make a bunch of treasures. And I love the look of it. Same thing with Benevolent Hydra. It's a Hydra that basically gives you that hardened scales ability. Whenever a counter goes on, you get an extra one instead. But it can also take a counter off itself to give it to something else. It's one I really wanted to think about. Do we want to draw more? Teferi's Aegis Insight can draw us more cards. Tamiyo originally came in the precon. I think it's a really interesting commander or interesting planeswalker. I don't think it just fit. I just don't know that it fits what I want the deck to do. I love the art. I think it's a cool planeswalker. And I thought, is there a slot for it? But I think truthfully, no. I think we're going too far into the counters. But I think it's interesting to keep on the back burner just in case. But let's do what we love to do on the channel the most. And get into our playtest. Remember, the goal of playtest on our channel is not to find a magical Christmas land. It's not just to show off all our best plays. But it's get into our gameplay scenarios and kind of start to figure out what hands are we looking for and how are we going to make this thing happen. I love the look of this hand. I have all three of my colors. I have the Druid, which is a mana dork that gets better once it has a counter on it. I have Warden of the Grove, one of the decks I built the deck, one of the cards I built the deck for. There's the Battle Priest for the lifelink and swords. I mean, I don't see the hand getting much better, right? And then turn 2, we see Tithe. So Tithe, to me, is one of those cards in this deck specifically that's going to change a lot about the Bumbleflower handing your opponent's cards. Like, Tithe just makes it worse, because then I'm just saying, oh, I get a treasure potentially every time I cast a spell. Warden gets a counter at end of turn. So now I really want to get a counter on, right, Incubation Druid, but there's no way for me to do it this turn. I think it's just Bumbleflower. Now the option is, do I want to put a counter on Bumbleflower, or do I want the Spirit? I'll just take the counter on Bumbleflower. End of turn. The other one, I did realize I have another mana there, so I could have left up a white for and use Incubation instead, just to keep up that Plowshares, just in case I feel like I need it. But now I have 6 mana, but I technically have 8 if I can use it the right way. So if I can cast a spell, I can have Bumbleflower put a counter on Incubation Druid, and then it can tap for 3. So I kind of have 8 as long as I can, right, maneuver my spells right. So my thought here is cast the Tithe, put the counter on the Druid. Now, unfortunately, on this cast of the Tithe, I can't profit from the creature, right, for the person drawing a card. But now I'm thinking of Battle Priest. On this cast, I think I'm going to give Bumbleflower the counter. It comes in. Warden of the Grove says, hey, Battle Priest, do you want the counters or the Spirit? I'm going to say the counters. Now, Bumbleflower gets to attack in the air as a 3/7. I'm going to gain life. Warden of the Grove might as well attack. It's a 4/4, and I'm going to hopefully gain some life. And then at the end of the turn, it gets a counter. Potentially gains 7 life that turn, right? Maybe I picked up treasures. I mean, did I pick up a treasure for my opponent when I casted Battle Priest? Do I pick up treasures as we go around the table? The nice thing about Smothering Tithe is you now might just start having way too much mana, right, for your own good. But cast Zamone. I think I put the counter on Warden so that I can potentially make the choice here when Zamone comes in. When Zamone comes in, it has the choice, do I want the 4 counters or the 4/4? I mean, I kind of want the 4/4. I mean, it seems like a great way to get another body, because Zamone can put a counter on herself. I really want Zamone for her bottom ability. Like, her ability to hand out the counters is great, but doubling the counters is what I really care about. I'm going to leave up Ripples and Swords. There's absolutely no reason. I was able to do this all with this mana up. I can keep the Incubation Druid back just in case. But you know, the combat, my thought is put a counter here and here, spread the love. This is in the air, so it's going to get a nice attack. These guys are just going to have lifelink. You know, take the attacks, have some fun. Warden gets a counter at the end of the turn. So there's Terra Symbiosis. Interesting. I think at minimum we want to do it to draw an extra card, right, to get some card draw. My thought is put the card on the Warden. And then, I mean, if Bumbleflower died at this point, we haven't more than enough mana to get it back. I could see somebody wanting to nuke Bumbleflower or the Warden at this point, right? But that's why we keep these up for the protection. Going to combat, my thought is counter here and here. Draw a card. right off of Terra Symbiosis. And then attack. Again, we're gaining life back. We're probably just swimming in treasures, would be my guess. I'd love a good outlet for our treasures at this point. We just don't have them. That was my thought of putting in a couple of those Hydras or big X spells to take advantage of it. I kind of wish I had a way to. I mean, Zimone can tap now to double, double the counters here and here, right? I mean, there's options there. Not a bad first playtest. You can kind of see the intention of what I was trying to do. Playtest number 2, we see the Incubation Druid again. We also see Innkeeper's Class. There's the Seas and the Offer You Can't Refuse. So not bad. I want to get the tap land in. Fortune Teller's talent is a really interesting card. So you can look at the top card of our library at any time. Get up to level 2, we can play the top card of our library as long as we've cast another spell this turn. And at level 3, we reduce the cost of the cards. My thought there is that if I'm trying to double spell to draw the cards, right, Fortune Tellers helps me kind of, extend my hand into the top. Kind of like the Incubation Druid, because this has got to come in tap. My thoughts, the talent puts the counter here, and then now I have 3 mana I can spend. I guess get Ominous Season. And this will be basically at level 1 right now. Come to the next turn, Seas gets a counter, right, because of a stronger card. 4 for Bumbleflower. Let's go 1 for the talent. That is the second card I've cast the second spell I've cast this turn. So I'm gonna draw 2. That's 2 there. It comes in, I can look at the top card, which is Bulwark Ox right now. And then 4 for Bumble, 1, I've got 2 blue left. Might as well do the Thought Vessel. Another counter on Bumbleflower. Innkeeper's Talent will put the counter on Bumbleflower just to get her rowing. She can't attack, but that's fine. Now I have no maximum hand size, so I'm not worried about it. So now as we come to this turn, love the idea of Falconer to get the creatures in the air. Bulwark is basically here to protect our board. It can sack itself to give all of our creatures with counters on them hexproof and indestructible. I could level up Fortune Teller's talent if I wanted to start digging into the top card of my library. But I'm thinking Min, put a counter on Bumbleflower. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mana left. Bulwark, put the counter on Min. That draws me 2. That makes the illusion. And then I've got, 2 white mana left? Would have been smart maybe to go green instead and just maybe level up the talent. Go to combat, put a counter on the Bulwark, attack here. And then I think we just continue to be in good shape, right? We're drawing cards, we're setting things up. There's the Confinement, which is beautiful because as long as we can continue to keep double spelling, I think we're in great shape. Just to continue to try to draw cards, we basically have to double spell, right, to make Confinement worth it, right? So if we go Confinement, put a counter here. Falconer, right, put a counter. Well, we want to pick a different give a different creature haste. We'll give the Bulwark or flying. Draw 2. Right, so now we can make sure we have some extra things in our hand for the Confinement. And then now we have enough counters for that. Again, I think we're just in a good stuff position. We have the Flawless to protect our board. We also have the Flare to protect our board. We wouldn't have enough mana up for the counter spell. Let's see what this. It was 3 for Confinement. 1, 2, 3. We'd have 1 up plus that. Yeah, I don't think we have enough, unfortunately. But, I mean, it just goes to show you that we had a bunch of mana. Now we're protected with the Confinement. Bulwark can get saddled by the Falconer. I'd probably just put a counter back on the Falconer just to protect it from underneath our things. And I just think we're in good shape. Again, the goal is counter stuff, counters good stuff. And I think, we're pretty easily demonstrating that. Go to playtest number 3 here. Keep it a 4-land with Chocobo Knights, and there's some ramp in the Rampant Growth and then the Synchronized Charge. And we see Ouroborite. Again, another one of those cards that we built this deck to take advantage of, and we're happy to see it here. Get the Rampant Growth. Got 2 white sources, but I don't think we have 2 blue sources, so we'll go get the island. Garturn. Again, I love the Ouroboros just to get it started. I also could see Bumbleflower being a choice. Let's do Bumbleflower. Again, now this works out because that's Arcane Signet here, Ouroboros here, draw 2. Ouroboros going to put a counter on each of them. Bumby gets to take a nice attack this turn. Now we're at turn 5 with 7 mana. Love the idea of Teferi. I also love the idea of Chocobo Knights, just because I think I can get Chocobo in. Get Bumby flying. Right? And then my thought is Tuskguard. Give Ouroboros flying. Draw the 2. Go to combat. Everybody gets 2 because of, everybody gets 3 because of Ouroboros' ability. Bumby's already in there. Ouroboros' already in the air. They have double strikes. So Bumby's 8 right now in the air. 16 damage is pretty darn close to commander damage. Same thing with Ouroboros being basically 12 in the air with double strikes. So we're really hitting hard now. And next turn, I mean, Bumby will be enough for just commander damage on its own with something like Synchronized Charge plus Ouroboros. The only downside right now is we have no way to protect these creatures. And I mean, I have a feeling somebody's probably should rightfully take out Ouroboros. If they're dumb enough to take out Bumby, I mean, I think I'm fine with that. They already have Trample and Double Strike. They're gonna hit hard. We, can get something else in, but I think again we're in great shape here. It's turn 5. Unless somebody has a wipe or has a removal for specifically Ouroboros, we're in good shape. And even if somebody has removal for Ouroboros, I think Synchronized Charge is still brutal. That puts Bumby up to a 8 counters with flying, 9th without it, so it's a 10 with double strike. Or we put the 2 from Synchronized on it, making it an 11 with double strike. Now it's a commander damage threat with trample, right? So this is, I think, what the deck was designed to do. Ouroboros are these ways to spread counters, plus something to profit from the counters from, and have a good time. Let's do one more playtest. I've got one more loaded up, so let's do it. Keeping a 4-laner, everybody lives for protection, Innkeeper's Talent plus Falcospara. Now, Falco's a commander I think is or a legend I think is interesting. You can take counters off of permanents we control to a creature we control to play cards off the top of our library, which I think is a really interesting ability because it's something that can help us kind of extend our hand, right? And I think a lot of times we'll end up having a free counter to give up, between a random creature or something like that. Kind of thinking Tidus, get the counter here. Old Talent, get the counter here. Draw 2. Talent can put it on Bumby and get in an attack. Should probably proliferate and draw me a card, right? One of the things that's really nice about that Tidus is going to help us out with. Galadriel's great. I just don't think I can get another creature in with it, right? Being 5 mana. I can go Sabsunin. It's going to potentially draw me some cards next turn. I can get it to even, so it can attack and block, mainly to block, right? Well, no, I can't, right? That's right, because it gets its start of main. So I probably want to leave no counters on it, right? So my thought was Spara plus just leave up everybody lives, just in case Spara comes in, put the counter on Bumbleflower, just to give it flying. Then my thought is go to combat, put the counter from Innkeeper's Talent onto Falcospara, just so that way we have them all here. She should be able to hit in, proliferating and drawing us a card. And again, still leave up that everybody lives, so that way we can protect this board and not get too worried. But note, we could start looking at the top card of our library. We can remove a counter. So there's Ouroboros, which I feel like it'd be good. I almost feel like Ouroboros plus Solitary Confinement would just be a brutal turn. We've got plenty of ways to draw cards, especially with Tidus drawing us a card every turn as long as we hit. That's 2 spells. 2 creatures are going in the air. Falco's in the air. So we're pretty much guaranteed to hit every turn. And I feel like this could just get out of shape. The only problem with going that route is that I have nothing to protect my board. Everybody lives works because I can have the mana for it. So it almost makes me wonder, do you just, take a counter off Spara to play Ouroboros, put the counter here. Now I've got 3 mana left. Right, hold up, everybody lives, go to combat. Both Ouroboros and talent trigger at the same time. Use the talent to put the counter on Ouroboros. Then put the counter on everybody. Right, and then you still have the attack here, which is going to lead to a proliferate and a draw. Now we could still hold the mana up, right, to protect ourselves with everybody lives, and now our board is just going to get completely out of shape, because now we can play that. Next turn, I think we can play the confinement with little to no worry at all. Play the confinement. We know we're drawing off of Tidus every turn now because of the flying on a creature already. And we can just try to dig for more protection. I think this is the goal of the deck. Dig, get these value pieces out, dig for the protection, hold it back, and have a good time. But I'd love to know, what do you think of Miss Bumbleflower down in the comment section below? Like I said, I'm going to have my version of the deck from my personal Moxfield linked. That way you can see kind of what I've been vibing on. I'd love to know what you think of Bumby down in the comment section below, and I will catch you all next one.